All right. So let me go ahead and get started. May peace and power elevation be to all of you. For those of you that's tuning in tonight, it's your girl Tiffany coming live on the StreamYard via Facebook and YouTube. So if you are on my YouTube channel, please make sure you like and subscribe and share. And just hit the notification bell. Also, if you're on Facebook, go ahead and share this video. So tonight's topic, we're going to deal with economic and businesses. And the topic is going to be about Nike laying off staffs and they $790 million loss of profit. And also, we're going to talk about how the lockdown is hitting minority businesses. And also, I'm going to share a little video relating to that subject as well. So let me go ahead and get started. Okay. Yeah, so let me go ahead and get started on the subject. So there's an article out about Nike, and it's coming from businessinsider.com. All right. So Nike is supposed to be laying off their staff, and they have lost over $790 million in profit quarterly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the article to you guys, and then we're going to expound on that article. All right. There's the article. And the title of the article is Nike is laying off staff and announces a $790 million loss in its latest quarterly earnings. And this was this article came out on June 26th of 2020. All right. So it's on Business Insider. Here it goes right here. So I hope you guys can see that. It says Nike is laying off some of its staff. The company confirmed to Business Insider. CEO John Donahoe announced the layoffs expected to occur in phases starting in July in a company-wide email on Thursday. The email, which Complex saw, did not specify how many employees and which departments would be affected, but mentioned that workers at Nike's retail store, distribution centers, and manufacturing facilities were not expected to be among those laid off. All right, so give a little background about Nike. Nike is a sportswear athletic gear, and it's one of the most popular sports brand. It is Nike, is Adidas, and Reebok. They are very popular, especially Nike. Nike happens to be like the number one. So as of right now, because of the things that's going on and taking place, it's affecting their profits. But see, there's something that's very ironic in this article as I continue on reading. So let me go ahead and go back to read this article. And it says Donahoe says the layoffs were not related to the pandemic or causes, but described them as an effort to restructure the overburdened matrix of the company, according to Complex. Okay, now let me stop right there. If it doesn't have anything to do with the pandemic and the causes, then what do you mean about overburdened matrix? That's the question. What is overburdened matrix? What do they mean about that? Because but let's continue. Nike told Business Insiders that any money saved would be reinvested in the company. And they go on to say that consumer direct acceleration is the next digitally empowered phase of our strategy, Nike said in a statement. We are building a flatter, nimbler, company and transforming Nike faster to define the marketplace of the future. We are shifting resources and creating capacity to reinvest in our highest potential areas, and we anticipate our realignment will likely result in a net loss of jobs. Okay, so check this out though. Now, this is the part right here. The announcement came shortly after Nike reported a net loss of $790 million in the fourth quarter, partly the result of the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on stores across North America. So, in one instance, in the paragraph, it states that it's considered as the overburdened matrix, which is why they laying off employees. But another part in the paragraph saying that part of it has something to do with the pandemic. So which one is it? Is it because of the pandemic, or is it because the overburden of the matrix? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And yes, it has affected a lot of businesses across the nation, because not only you had the pandemic, but you also had the protests that was going on too. And people were boycotting. And most people don't have the stimulus package. Then you still got people who don't have their unemployment. So it's not as many people out there shopping as usual. So that is something that can also play a factor into why Nike had to end up cutting back on their employees. All right, here we go. These, there we go. These decisions are exceptionally difficult because they impact friends and colleagues at Nike, Donahoe wrote in the email, according to Complex. You have my personal commitment that we will put people at the center throughout this entire process. We will support everyone impacted by this transition. In its statement to Business Insider, Nike said, we are committed to showing compassion and respect for our transitioning employees through thoughtful and robust severance practices consistent with our company values, our legal obligation, the competitive marketplace, and individual employee situation. All right. And that's it. So the question I may ask, when it comes down to Nike, what would be the state of Nike in the future once this pandemic is over with? Where would the state of Nike be at in the future? Would they still be the top competitors when it comes to the sports gear, athletic gear? Would they still be that top competitor? Once all this said and done, will they still be at the top? Because as of right now, they're laying off employees, right? They lost over $790 million in profit. So what is the future going to look like for Nike? And, you know, you got some of everybody that's working for Nike. All right. You ain't just got the Caucasian people. You got our people working for them. So would they still be the top competitors? Would they eventually have to go bankrupt? Would they be out of business? Once all of this is said and done, would they be out of business? Would they be forced to sell their would they be forced to sell their name over to another company? These are the questions that I'm having. So I put up Nike because, again, by them being a major business and being the most popular brand out there, it's just going to show you that this pandemic is affecting everybody, including those top competitors, including those name brand clothing line, athletics, whatever. Everybody is being affected. Every business are being affected. Businesses are losing profits. And that's a lot of revenue. That's a lot of money. $790 million is a lot of money to be losing. That's a whole lot. So now let's look at the whole lockdown situation and how it's affecting minority businesses, particularly Black businesses. So I have a newspaper article. Oh my goodness, hold on. Ooh. Sorry about that. So I have a newspaper article, right? As you can see. And it's come from Wall Street. It's come from Wall Street Journal. And this article came out on June 15th, which was about 2 weeks ago. So I am going to read this article to you guys. Okay, and it's called Lockdowns Hits Minority Businesses. So on here it says, if COVID-19 cases keep rising in the 2 weeks to come, cities and state leaders might reimpose a strict lockdown. Keyword might impose. They should bear in mind who being harmed most by the ensuing economic destruction. From February to April, the number of active Black businesses owners fell 41%. From February to April, the number of active Black business owners fell 41%. That's a high number, 41%. Knowing that we don't have a whole lot of Black businesses out here, but 41% is a very high number. According to an analysis last week from the National Bureau of Economic Research, these studies provide the first estimate of the early stage effects of COVID-19 on small business owners, writes Robert Fairley, in economics at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Overall, he finds the number of working business owners plummet from 15.0 million in February 2020 to 11.7 million in April of 2020. Now, what do they mean by plummet? Okay, so plummet means that the number doesn't drop. All right, cool. So basically, the numbers dealing with the business owners, particularly minority businesses, had went from 15.0 million, right, to 11.7 million. And that's a drop of 3.3 million or 22%. So businesses has failed at 22%. All right, and then skip down in the newspaper article right here. It says no group was immune to negative impacts of social distancing policy mandates and demand shifts, Mr. Farley writes, but the damage wasn't spread evenly. About 441,000 Black business owners, or 41%, disappeared from the data. Let me read that again. About 441,000 Black business owners, or 41%, disappeared from the data. For Latino businesses, the figures were 658,000, or 32%. For immigrants, 1.1 million, or 36%. And for women, 1.3 million, or 25%. And then we go down further. The economic damage, if prolonged, may be problematic for broader racial inequality because of the importance of minority businesses for local job creation. Mr. Farley concludes, the next important question is whether the shutdowns of small businesses are temporary or longer term. Since bills keep piling up even when revenue isn't coming in, many of these small businesses face an uphill climb as it is. If they're now getting back to work, and if they think they've taken the necessary precautions to do so safely, then the last thing they need is a politician ordering them to close shop for another month or two. So let's look at Black businesses. Black businesses fell at 41%. That means over 441,000 Black business owners have seen the number decrease during this pandemic. Will it continuously affect them in the long run? Would they continuously be affected in the long run? Of course, because they're considered as minority business. So minority businesses are going to more likely be affected the most out of everybody. And then there's a chart showing it too. So Black make up the highest. Black and Latino and immigrants, they make up the highest number. And what we're looking at is an economic, a major economic crisis. That's what we're looking at right now. But let me go ahead and let me go ahead and go on this website. I'm on WSJ.com, WallStreetJournal.com. I'm on their website. So I'm going to play the video regarding to the whole economics and how it's going to affect the economy later on in the future. So let me go ahead and play this video.
That's the struggle going on between the
Jesus Christ.
for a speedy recovery. This as Congress considers a phase 4 coronavirus relief plan. The White House and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are eyeing as states across the country reopen for business, fears of a second wave of coronavirus infections are dampening hope for a speedy recovery. This as Congress considers a phase 4 coronavirus relief plan. The White House and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are eyeing additional aid to businesses and workers, but just how necessary is another round of spending? We're back with Dan Henninger, Kim Strassel, and Mary Anastasia O'Grady. So, Mary, let me start with you. Seems to me financial markets, despite some downturn in the stock market this week, have recovered quite a bit from their March panic attack. Where do you think the economy stands?
Well, I mean, I think that move up in the stock market is, you mentioned fear of coronavirus coming back. There's also FOMO, which is fear of missing out. And, before this started, we had a very healthy economy. We had very low unemployment. So that meant we also had a very confident consumer class. And I think that the narrative that says, we're going higher is all about the fact that if, either we get a vaccine or we just return to normal, and you have a Fed which is pumping huge amounts of credit into the economy. People think that that it's a pretty rosy picture. And I'll add one more thing, which is that there's nowhere else to get yield. You have to go to equities if you're going to get any kind of a return, because you can't leave your money sitting in fixed income. So all of those things, I think, are driving the stock market. The other narrative, of course, is that we're going to see more bankruptcies. That means banks, while I don't think they're going to go under, they're going to have less capital because of the capital requirements. They're going to have less to lend. So in that scenario, it's a probably year clawing out of this hole, and that's the struggle going on between those two narratives.
Well, and Dan, the White House seems to think that there's on the one hand they say the economy is going to have a nice sharp comeback in the third and fourth quarters. On the other hand, they're saying, okay, we'll cut a deal with Nancy Pelosi for spending a lot more money. We've already spent, I don't know, what is it, not spent at all, but we appropriated something like $2.7 million. The Fed has all this firepower that hasn't been used. Do we need a phase 4 if we're going to have, if the economy is recovering?
Well, I think there are two ideas at work here in contradiction with one another. These injections of funding into the economy that we have gone through were done while the economy was, in fact, locked down under federal government and state governments. That was a really unique situation. Now they are opening and the economy is beginning to restart again. And the question is whether public policy is going to incentivize that private economic activity or going to pretend, as I think the Democrats are doing, that it is not happening and continue to inject extraordinary amounts of money directly into people's pockets. Now, if the recovery continues and if the opening continues without a very serious problem with the return of the coronavirus, then I think the White House and the Republicans would be entitled to push back and to say, let's go slow. Let's use some of the money that we've already appropriated correctly and see if the economy can recover. But on that point, there have been some surges in a few states like Texas and Arizona, but I think we need a lot more help than we're getting from the epidemiological community to give us some sense of whether hospital capacity in those states can, in fact, handle the degree of cases that are occurring out there, rather than simply letting the media suggest that this quote unquote surge means we have to return to a lockdown. There has to be a middle way that allows the economy to function while protecting the most vulnerable people out there.
Kim, I think the lockdowns are over, essentially. I mean, there'll be flare-ups, and we're going to have to cope with those. It's got to watch out for the hospital system. We've got to make sure you can surge equipment in if you need in certain areas. You have to watch out very carefully. But I think the damage from the lockdowns were just so extensive, we can't really live with that anymore. The question is, can the president politically live without a phase 4? Can he say, look, we're doing all right without it. We don't need it?
Well, he should be able to. I would hope he would. And by the way, one of the happiest things I've heard was Kevin Hassett saying they intend to wait and see maybe until the end of July before they make a decision. And what that ought to do is give the administration and Republicans the breathing room to let some better economic data come in, to make the argument we need to see how the money we put out there already is actually faring. And I think, too, Paul, from my own perspective, as a free market person who worries about the size of government growth here, and
have recovered quite a bit from their March panic attack. Where do you think the economy stands?
Well, I mean, I think that move up in the stock market is, you mentioned fear of coronavirus coming back. There's also FOMO, which is fear of missing out. And, before this started, we had a very healthy economy. We had very low unemployment. So that meant we also had a very confident consumer class. And I think that the narrative that says, we're going higher is all about the fact that if, either we get a vaccine or we just return to normal, and you have a Fed which is pumping huge amounts of credit into the economy, people think that that it's a pretty rosy picture. And I'll add one more thing, which is that there's nowhere else to get yield. You have to go to equities if you're going to get any kind of a return, because you can't leave your money sitting in fixed income. So all of those things, I think, are driving the stock market. The other narrative, of course, is that we're going to see more bankruptcies. That means banks, while I don't think they're going to go under, they're going to have less capital because of the capital requirements. They're going to have less to lend. So in that
All right, so the main thing that lady was talking about, that they're going to see more bankruptcy and banks going to have less to lend because they already lending out so much money. So eventually they're not going to have enough to lend out to multiple businesses out there. So multiple businesses is going to end up filing for bankruptcy. And I was reading an article the other day. I was reading in this article, this same newspaper, Wall Street Journal. And I want to read something to y'all real quick. The fan is really killing my ass. So, I'm going to read something to y'all real quick. This came from the Wall Street Journal newspaper. And the title is called Debt Battles Awaits Post-Virus World. And we're going to go into this first paragraph right here. In the U.S. and elsewhere, government debt is set to soar this year, reflecting lower tax revenue and the cost of financial aid to businesses and households during lockdowns. The International Monetary Fund forecasts that U.S. government debt will reach 131%. That's a very high number, 131% of annual economic output this year, up from 109% in 2019. The debt is a higher burden than after World War II. Other countries are facing similarly high debt levels, including the UK, France, Italy, and Spain. So they're looking at, after this pandemic, right? They're looking at the debt being at 131%. Because in 2019, The debt was at 109%. And what that goes to show you, a major economic crisis is getting ready to take place. So, in all conclusion, because I'm going to end this video, we must prepare ourselves for this. Many of us is crying out for reparation. And yes, we need reparation, but the question is when that's going to ever happen. Is it ever going to happen? Not as long as we continue to be in debt as a country. Not, I mean, well, the government being in debt because my people is already in debt. But as long as the U.S. government continues to stay in debt, and with the numbers going up, and there's a lot of, a fiscal, what's it called? A fiscal cliff. If a lot of that is going on, then it's going to be hard to gain reparation. And people looking at the number at 22 trillion. And some people looking at 14 trillion. But I don't think that if we ever do get a reparation, I don't think we're going to ever get 14 trillion. I just can't see it happen. I can't see us as a people getting $14 trillion when this country is constantly going into debt. So that's just my observation. So yeah, tonight I wanted to do something dealing with economics, and also dealing with the whole thing with Nike and whatnot, because I feel like it's important that we touch on business and economics as well. So I'm doing general topics. Of course, I didn't get a lot of people watching, but that's okay. That's fine. Some people might come back in. They might watch it. Cool. But yeah, we got to keep up with what's going on in the news. So forget all the fact about the Illuminati and all this other stuff that people want to talk about or people trying to share. We need to keep an eye on what's going on, what's taking place at the moment. We have to keep up, especially when it comes to economics, because we're all being impacted by this. So, I encourage you guys to watch the news. I encourage you guys to read the newspaper. Like, don't just be caught up in your ego and like, oh, the hell with it, but actually read and find out, well, what's the next thing taking place? And prepare yourself for what might be the worst. So that's all. But anyways, I thank you guys, for those of you that was watching. Thank you for watching my video. And if you're on YouTube, please make sure you share, subscribe, and like, and also hit the notification bell. And again, if you're on Facebook, make sure you share this video content. Until then, you guys, thank you so much. May peace and power elevation be to all of you. And you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you, sis. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right, so y'all take it easy. Until next time, I'll keep you posted. Always come up with great topics. And remember, knowledge is essential. Knowledge is power. Never forget that. All right, then.